Oh, hello, and welcome to Aldente Rigamortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the Stand for Evil.
And I'm the Gamer in Yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we have The Way Through the Woods, a Curtisville story. That's right, guys. We're back. We're back in Curtisville.
Forget. I didn't forget the entire timeline.
Yeah, we didn't have like a secret meeting off recording where we had to run down like what's happened in all the other Curtisville stories we've covered so far. No, that didn't happen.
No, we didn't start the first one 7 years ago. So, it's understandable we might forget.
Yeah, certainly not. And the first one you weren't even a part of. Yeah.
No.
When we covered
I really don't remember this one. I wonder why.
Yeah. But we are back with Pratt 99's Creepypasta Stories of Curtisville, and we are covering one that they gave us in a YouTube comment back in 2020 when we covered Summer Break back in 2019. So yeah, this one. Let me double check here. I just want to make sure I have my information. They sent us a comment on YouTube, and they suggested this story, The Way Through the Woods, which is a prequel to the Summer Break story. So that is why we are covering it now, as we and moving forward for the next few weeks, we're going to be covering a bunch of other Curtisville stories that are affiliated with the Summer Break 2017 and Summer Break story in general. So.
Order, right?
As far as I know, I think we again off recording. We did some cataloging and making sure we're on the right track, because these stories aren't in an order, and like you can just like go to the bottom of the story on the wiki and like go to next or previous kind of thing, like the Summer Break stories were. So, but yes. So if you haven't figured out by now for some reason, The Way Through the Woods is by Pratt 99, along with all their other stories.
I'm going to interrupt you. You said not like the Summer Break stories were. I think you meant not like the WTS stories were.
No, I mean actually the Summer Break stories, because actually the original Summer Break was actually part of a line of stories that actually, when you went to the bottom of the page after you read the story, it had a next and before like kind of thing for like for the previous story or the next story in line to read. Okay,
we just got off the WTS stories. Actually, did we get through all those?
No, we're still going through them. Yeah. We're taking a break from the WTS stories to cover some more Curtisville stories. Mm-hmm. Because we did Summer Break 2017 a few weeks ago, and now that's gotten me at least into the mood to go back to Curtisville, because I actually do really enjoy the setting and such of Curtisville. So
as Wolf Cop
hype. That and Elf Cop. That's from Curiosity Killed the Rat, I believe, which was another Curtisville story. Anyway, to make this a little bit less confusing, so The Way Through the Woods, it's by Pratt 99 on Creepypasta.wiki. You can check it out there, as well as all the other Curtisville stories. And before we get too far into the weeds or travel through the mists and fog, let's give our initial recommendations here. I'm gonna partially recommend it. It was a full recommendation last night, teetering onto a partial recommendation. And then I decided to just kind of like push it down to partial recommendation. The more I thought about it. So
you're valid. You're wrong, but you're valid.
Fair.
Yeah. And I'm not going to recommend this.
All right.
And I'm going to give it a partial.
What?
You just said I was wrong.
You asshole.
No, I'll recommend it, honestly.
Oh, you're actually gonna recommend it?
I mean, I'll see if you guys change my mind, but I mean, it was a long read, but I didn't hate it.
Okay, fair
I
enough.
enjoyed the read.
I was also going into this expecting you guys to both give it like a non-recommendation, just from
Well,
like,
of course, because we're horrible people. We hate everything, right?
yes.
You're not supposed to agree with me there.
Yeah. Well, maybe you should be a little nicer next time.
Oh, okay, Mr. Partial Recommendation, and I'm fully recommending.
Hey. Well, maybe your comments could like push it back up that hill to the. To
Maybe they will,
or
or we'll find
maybe
out.
I'll drag you down with me.
Yeah, I guess
Or
we'll
maybe
find out.
Mikey will drag us both down even deeper into the abyss of hatred.
Yeah, either I will pull you away from the dark void door of non-recommendations, or one of you will be pulling me through the door with your hundreds of shadowy arms.
Yes, exactly. Nice connective tissue there from the story.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So yeah, let's dive into this with the rundown. Pretense to the rundown here. This is about 2 pages long on Google Docs. So I will my synopsis of the story is, so I will try and get through it as quickly as I can.
Okay.
So it's storming outside, so the Satoi kids, Olivia, Mizaki, Izumi, and Kyoto, upon exhausting every other indoor activity they can find, are playing hide and seek, with Olivia, the youngest, as the seeker. You may remember Olivia, Mizaki, Izumi, and Kyoto from summer break. However, as she sets out to seek her triplet siblings, the closet to her sister's room opens up to a beautiful forest space beyond, so Olivia decides to investigate. Meanwhile, a wind blows through the room, scattering books and papers of Mizaki's, including a scrapbook which has a clipping of a story about a scornful witch who created a sinister booby-trapped spellbook, and articles about a turn-of-the-century schooner that was cursed/plagued by a swarm of large venomous centipedes and scorpions while traveling across the Pacific. Moving on. Cut to Mizaki tumbling out of her hiding place in a broom closet to get the ringing phone because their
All three of the sisters were in there, weren't they?
I only heard it only says Mizaki, so
Oh, I comedically saw all of them fall out.
that's just as
I might
good.
be wrong.
Yeah, that's also pretty good. But yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mizaki runs to the phone that is ringing, and she complains about because their babysitter hasn't arrived, so they didn't pick up the phone. And the call is from this brat named Ellie Lambert, who the girls don't really like, telling her about this thing that she found in a shed in the woods. Mizaki tells her she is not interested in any of it and is told off by Ellie. Back to Olivia in the strange woods beyond the closet door. It leads to a dilapidated hut, and the door to this hut is locked, and it seems to be empty and dark inside based off through the window, the kind of dirty windows that she can see through. But as Olivia tries to leave, she starts hearing movement and seeing strange shadows in the window to the hut. She also hears her sisters in the woods seemingly looking for her. Then the door to the house opens and creepy shadow arms grab Olivia, but just as she's about to be a goner, her sister and the babysitter, Kaylin, who's an elf, by the way, arrives and stamps out the horrors that had been luring Olivia into the woods during the storm outside. And as the rest of the sisters arrive to the scene, Kaylin banishes the ghostly monster from the creepy shack. Back in the Satoi apartment, Kaylin has made them all hot chocolate and iced tea, and explains that Ellie apparently locked her in the laundry shed when Kaylin wasn't looking, and she needed some help to get out, and that's why she wasn't there sooner to babysit them. It seems that Ellie Lambert is a snooty rich brat who wants to learn magic and has been asking the Satori siblings since she thinks that they have magic because they are Chickcharney half-breeds. It's here too that Kaylin tells the story of of that horrific thing that was in the shack. It was once a girl named Lucille. Like Ellie, she bugged Kaylin's older sister Judith back in the 70s or 80s and was a bossy brat. Eventually, as they got older and through high school, Judith managed to get away from Lucille's constant presence. But Lucille then went down a darker path of witchcraft, starting to learn darker magics. Strange things start happening to Kaylin's family, and they eventually move across town. Judith and some friends went looking for Lucille to try and stop her madness, but it turned out that they were currently away from their house, Lucille's family and such. As it had been, it was in the process of being fumigated for various dangerous insects and such. The family eventually came back to the house, though, just to grab some things and then move away. Though it was reported that Lucille wasn't with her parents when they came to get the stuff. Cut to some years later, Judith, Kaylin, and their younger brother Arlen decided to walk through an old subdivision that Judith had some friends at, only to discover that the subdivision was empty and overgrown. The boarding house where Judith's friend lived was replaced with a strange white house, and from the door, a creepy demonic Lucille appeared and gave chase. The trio made it to a friend's house outside of the subdivision, and this person then told them that the neighborhood was overrun by bugs and creepy crawlies and mold, and everyone had to leave. All of this was shortly after Lucille's family, who were staying at the boarding house at the time, were forced to leave. So it seems Lucille, who we find out around now is Lucille Lambert, played with dark magic and became possessed by something horrible and demonic. She dwells in a hut in the woods that moves its path around magically to lure people to it. Back to the present day, Mazaki, who has been jotting down notes in a notebook about what Kaylin has been talking about, comes to a realization that Ellie Lambert found a spell book similar to the one Lucille did, and may follow a similar path of corruption. And then a weird, creepy centipede creature is caught spying on the kids from the window before falling into the garden and disappearing. Finn. So yeah,
spying. It's not like it had a headset on.
What?
It's like reporting back to command.
Well, I mean, it was spying spying as in
Yeah,
it was
I
peeping
know.
through the window. But yeah, that was a rundown for The Way Through the Woods. And I guess now we should move on to Everyone Tolerates the Grand Inquisitions at this point. Yeah, I've got a couple. Got a couple here. So I'm going to start with this one here. It was on gray, wet days, such as this one, when there was nothing but reruns on Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, and all the board games and videos had already been played. Hide and go seek seemed like a worthwhile idea. So I feel like this sentence could be improved, mostly because it's all run-on sentence.
Yeah.
So this is how I fixed it, or how I would have gone about repairing it. There was nothing but reruns on Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, semicolon. It was on gray, wet days like this, comma, when all the board games and videos had already been played, comma, that hide and go seek seemed like a worthwhile idea, period. So I didn't add a period to this, but I added a semicolon, which does act as a break between two similar subjected scenes or sentences. Thanks, Jess. Also, just a quick sad connective tissues time. This just reading this particular sentence just reminded me that very recently, I think a week or two from this episode being recorded, Cartoon Network no longer exists. They've shut down the channel.
But
I know. I mean, we never we're from Canada, so we didn't ever really get Cartoon Network. But I understand that it was basically a huge. It even for up here, like it was a huge nostalgic thing for us growing up because like we could get like satellite and some of that grabbed channels from the U.S. So like
watch the shit out of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but
Damn.
yes, sadly, Cartoon Network has come to a close. I don't know where kids are going to get their cartoons and fun like nostalgia thing, but I guess that's like what the internet's for, I guess now.
Plus, there's like Nickelodeon and other shit too, right?
Yeah, I guess. But Cartoon Network was like such a staple.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, and
Toonami.
yeah.
That's where a lot. I mean, again, that's what the internet. Like the internet's kind of like usurped it as like streaming networks and stuff like that. But like, Cartoon Network was just still such a it was such a big thing nostalgically. But yeah, it is no longer with us.
Rip.
Yep.
F's in the chat.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so moving on to my next thing here.
F's in the comments.
Yes. Yeah, F's in the comments. If we get F's in the comments of this YouTube channel or this or like on any of the podcasting platforms, I will be very happy, and I will.
Yeah, me too.
I will bring it up in a later podcast episode. But yeah, so moving on to the next thing I have. Again, she called out more loudly this time. Izanami, Mizaki, Kyoto. No response. Okay, so one of Olivia's triplet sisters' names is established through the story and others as Izumi. Yet Olivia is shouting out seemingly for an Izanami. No wonder she isn't getting a response, at least from Izumi. She's getting her name wrong.
Whoops.
Yeah, I read this like, eh? So
I didn't catch that.
It's so weird because you have to like write that purposefully, right? Because it's not like you're just typing in Izumi, like Izanami, like that. Like for some reason, like you had to add in like extra Z's and whatnot.
Like a running name for the character before they decided on Izumi. Then they forgot at that one moment.
Yeah.
Which one they actually went with.
Yeah.
Like people are human. Except when they're Chick Charney and stuff like that.
Or like half Chick Charney and like
yeah.
For anybody who doesn't know and like hasn't listened to our previous episodes where we actually figured out what Chick Charneys are like these mystical like owl like cryptids. I'm not sure I can't remember where they're from exactly, if it's like in Asia or if it's in like South America, like near the like on one of the South American islands or something like that. But
so would a half Chick Charney like humanoid have like big anime eyes?
Yeah, actually, big mouth or big eyes, small mouth, like anime characters. So they are literally like just live action, like live action anime characters, like Battle Angel Alita live action. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, so obviously, I think it's supposed to be Izumi in the sentence, not Izanami. And like you said, it could have just been like they had a name for them, like another name for them originally before they settled on this one. So, but we'll move on to the next thing I have here. Seconds stretched into minutes, with only the ever increasing rain and thunder to break the lonely silence. Then an icy wind whipped through the room, scattering papers and posters like startled birds. All right, so I feel like there should be something added to this a little bit. So I added it, and here's the sentence with my addition. Seconds stretched into minutes as Olivia's passage further into the space beyond the closet continued, and still she did not return. Only the ever-increasing sound of rain and thunder outside the apartment broke the lonely silence. Suddenly, an icy wind whipped through the room, scattering papers and posters like startled birds. Just because, like, as I was reading, I was like, oh, like I caught myself as like, where's the rain? Like, what's this rain, thunder? Or something? Like, it felt like it should mention that, like, the seconds and minutes like stretched on, and still like Olivia hadn't come back from like inside the closet area. So I figured this might be like a good thing to add to like kind of clarify the scene a little bit.
The way I saw that was like she was literally standing there for several minutes inside the
Okay, that's
room.
interesting. Yeah, because I saw it as more just like it's like if this was a movie or like establishing the shot or the scene for the story. It's like inside the room where she had left from, and like she still hadn't come back from that space and beyond the closet. So it's just like the sound of the rain and thunder from outside the apartment, which was established earlier. That's all that was heard, and like you didn't hear from Olivia again. But I guess it could also be like seconds stretched into minutes as she's like waiting there, like waiting to go inside. But then like, wouldn't she have noticed the icy wind whipping around the room behind her? And wouldn't that have been brought up?
I think.
Yeah. So, but that's just how I would have fixed the sentence. So, or the establishing shot. But I'll move on to the next thing here. The deck's invaded by hundreds of 8-inch long blue centipede, whose bite is said to be as deadly as that of a pit viper. Okay, so firstly, I think Dex needs to have a possessive there, like a comma between deck and S, or maybe it's supposed to be Dex and then an apostrophe. I'm never sure about that. How to make that how to make a thing possessive, because it's like
as far as I know, it's apostrophe S. The only time it's S apostrophe is if the standard word, non-plural, ends with an
the
S.
Dex is okay. Yeah. Got you. Okay, so yeah, in this case, it should be like the deck apostrophe S. The Dex in or. Because it's also because it's actually not actually a possessive. It's actually like the decks were. Honestly, it should say the decks were invaded by hundreds of 8-inch long blue centipedes, or it should read the decks were invaded by hundreds of the 8-inch long blue centipede.
Brought them up previously.
It
already brought up them previously.
No, but like just like because you can use like the hundreds of the 8-inch blue centipede, and that way you don't have to change any of the verbiage into the next sentence, which is whose bite is said to be as deadly as that of a pit viper, because you're then having to go through that sentence and make things plural, like whose bite.
It sounds weird when you say like it was invaded by hundreds of the centipedes, which sounds like you previously described the centipedes.
Fair, yeah. Okay, then just go the full 9 yards and just have like hundreds of blue centipedes, and then whose bite were said to be as deadly as pit vipers, like pluralizing all the stuff in the next sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And then my next one here: those that had not been carried off by the sea soon succumb to the cold. So I think one of those hads just needs to be removed. So it's those that had not been carried off by the sea, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
And then my next one here: the centipedes and scorpions had quite possibly made their nest. The clock in the laundry room now read 20 to 2. What? So this is a spot where like the article clipping and the story in Olivia's home continues, like where the clipping ends and Olivia's and Mizaki and Olivia's home and stuff of that, like that story is continuing. And so this is a spot in the story where I feel there should be a separating horizontal line to kind of help clarify that this is suddenly a new scene.
Yeah. You should also know that the previous section is italicized and the next section isn't.
This is true, but we all know what we think about italicization.
Yes. But that is the cue that is in this story. And I do have a note about transitions and my actual thoughts and how there isn't many.
Yes, you are correct. I think I have another example in my notes of another spot where there should be a separating horizontal line because of a sudden scene cut or scene switch. But yeah, there's a couple of scenes in the story where like the transition is not very good.
Mm-hmm.
It is italics.
Yeah, because it's an article. Which but like yes, I know, Gaber. I know.
I hate italics so much.
I know. We all know at this point.
Oh fuck, man. Just wish they would skew them more.
Yeah, I know.
I wish my brain would be able to recognize them more, maybe.
Yeah.
That's probably all it is.
So I'll move on to the next thing I have.
Fine.
The broom closet suddenly burst open and Mizaki stumbled out in clatter of brooms and mops. So yeah, it only seems to be Mizaki's mentioned. So like, unless it adds that like and Mizaki and her or Mizaki, Izumi and her and Kyoto all came out tumbling out or something like that. But
yeah, I probably just misread it or read what I wanted to read.
Yeah. But yeah, so the actual issue I had with the sentence is I think there should be an A in there. So it's like, and Mizaki tumbled out in a clatter of brooms and mops.
Yeah.
And then my next one here. Mizaki stiffened and glared at the phone. What did you just call me? The house was a hovel, not a home, standing dark and deserted. Its decrepit tiled roof and wooden porch nearly swallowed up by the surrounding trees and brush. So this is another instance where the story just suddenly transitions. And
I had a problem with that transition, honestly.
Yeah. So I honestly think like this would really help with like a separating horizontal line.
Yeah, because when I first read that,
yeah,
I thought like she was like yelling at her on the phone, and then describing the house was basically the camera panning back, showing the house that they all live in normally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's suddenly transitioned to Olivia like walking to the hut. Yeah.
Mm.
There's a number of spots in the story where like a horizontal line would help with the transition between scenes. It was a little confusing reading it on because I was reading, believe it or not, I like, even though I had like this like saved onto a Google Doc for like simplicity of grabbing like quotes and stuff, I actually wasn't reading the story through my Google Docs. I was reading it through the wiki page, and the Creepypasta wiki formatting of the story sometimes confused things with that. So like I feel like we said earlier, I feel like some horizontal lines in the story, even like on the wiki, might help for like those transitionary phases between scenes. So
like the length of this and the amount of different stories being told from different perspectives and different like times and stuff, like there really needs to be separation.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's like at least 3 or 4. There's this story. Like I think I'll bring this up later in the story in my notes and stuff like that. But there's like 2 or 3 stories being like slammed together in this story, and like it's interesting and good. Like it's cool for that. But like there needs to be some more like proper like organization of those, and like otherwise it gets really confusing. But I digress. I'll move on to the next thing I have. They might have even felt an intense wave of sheer panic and fear at the plain, pointed features of the girl quietly regarding her partially emerged reflection in the murky glass. So at the beginning of that sentence, it has 2 felts, and I just feel like it just needed one of those instances of felt. So it's like they might have even felt an intense wave of sheer panic, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then this example that I have next.
A lot of buildup. Weird. It's just a big thing.
On top of that, she was really, really bossy. Everything had to be her way. Like she wanted to join a ballerina dance class. Judith had to join even though she had 2 left feet and ended up being relegated to set decorating and pulling the curtain to open the show, or when Lucille attended a birthday party featuring a lot of cheesy carnival games and people in clown costumes. Judith had to be there too, even though my sister found such games and clowns lame and annoying. I know this is dialogue. This entire like story that's being told to us like from about Lucille is in dialogue technically, because it's like quote at the beginning of this paragraph and then no quote at the end until like the next one. Until the next paragraph. But goddamn, that is a run-on sentence. There's not a single period in that. There's an ellipses at the very start of it, but even that ellipses like doesn't negate the long-winded like comma sentences after.
Maybe if it said basically like at the start of it, like she started a tirade, and then like that's her like aggressively saying this story, you know, like really quickly.
Yeah,
then that would make more sense.
Yeah, because then we're getting like some more like we're getting the vibe of like how she's like telling the story.
Yeah,
and
like, oh my god, that bitch! She did this and did this and this and this. Like, and, it makes more sense doing it that way.
Yeah, and you can kind of get that in the actual writing like of the dialogue, but just extra clarification, because like otherwise like you got a couple of chuckle fucks online that are complaining about how run on these sentences are, even though it's dialogue.
Yeah. But realistically, like,
yeah,
you were running out of gas just doing
I was.
that.
Like as soon as I made this quote, I was like, oh, this is gonna suck. When I
Yeah.
quote this. But yeah, there's a few other instances in the story like this. This is just the example I gave. I don't really have a fix for it. It's just like, yeah, you need to cut these like sentences up a little bit with periods.
Mm-hmm.
And then my next one here, Ellie Kelp calling me Stinky McDoodoo Head and kept telling me to stand downwind. So I know it's dialogue again, but honestly, that that kelp at the beginning should be kept. Like Ellie kept calling me. Yeah. The next thing I have, Judith just caught a glimpse of the place before she took off, but she told me later it reminded her of the Scottish capital of Edinburgh, with its steepled cobbled streets and tall gloomy buildings, with its steep cobbled streets and tall gloomy buildings. I think the story just repeated itself by accident.
I'm that happened?
Yeah, no, legit. Like I have like in the writing, it's like Scottish capital of Edinburgh with its steep cobbled street and tall gloomy buildings, with its steep cobbled streets and tall gloomy buildings.
Yeah, her needle got stuck in the groove when she was saying that.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was a bit. Like I legit like before I kept reading, I thought it was like, is she okay? Like what's going on?
Yeah. How the hell did I just read over that? Weird.
I don't know. Yeah. All right. So moving on to the next thing I have here. So did they come armed with holy water and crosses and a vampire hunting kit? So I'd say it should be holy water, not holly water, but this is Curtisville. There could be like any number of other like of like weird like magical like accoutrements that they reference.
It's true.
But I think it's supposed to be holy water.
But that one, since it's dialogue, could be how the character speaks.
That's true.
Yeah, they have like a Abramanese kind of accent to them because of their upbringing. It doesn't mention it, but
I know. Wow, you're really just gonna like do that to me? Like you're gonna do me dirty like that?
Oh yeah. Oh, you know it.
Next time I see you, you better watch out. I'm gonna toss you up in front of a bus.
You do that. That's fine. I'm a ninja. Let's go pro and it'll just go right over me, and then I'll look all awesome on the other side.
Okay, quick connective tissue time. I was watching TikTok today, and I saw some guy's French bulldog like run out of his house when he wasn't looking, go onto the road, get hit by a car, roll, and but like was completely fine, and then I started running back home.
Jeez,
like and I was like,
oh, shit.
I know, because I was like, I saw it, I was like, shit, I just like, it's like, because I like, oh god, like I just saw a poor dog get hit by a car, but then the dog sprung right back up and started running back home. It's like, Jesus Christ, that is the luckiest dog. That dog is part cat. It just used up one of its lives.
It's part rubber.
Yep. But yeah, so I'll move on to the next thing I have here. But they didn't find Lucille that day or the next. And when one kid checked by her house, it was entirely covered with this large fumigating tent. So it's supposed to say fumigating tent. Like it's just like they're missing. They've accidentally put in an N when it should be an M.
Yeah.
And then my last grammar inquisition is this one. I also was worried that I wasn't going to believed. So I think in this case, it should be, again, I know it's dialogue, but I think it should be, I wasn't going, I also was worried that I wasn't going to be believed. But that is the end of my grammar inquisition. So Mikey, D stands for evil.
All right. The one I have here, the first one I have here is a missing quotation mark. So
that one I have.
The quote. Well, I'm going to start a sentence early for the quote.
Mm-hmm.
Until what? Olivia finally asked as she sat nestled between Mizaki and Izumi. until this neo-hippie girl brought forth something that should have been left dormant and well buried. So the second until sentence there should have a quotation mark at the start because it's someone else talking and
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're questioning this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the next one I have here. I was 7 at the time, and even I thought she was a whiny, bumbling oaf, sad and pathetic even. But after Judith, and then I saw some really weird stuff, I actually became really afraid of that kid. So I think there's a then that it doesn't need to be there, because it reads bear with. But after Judith and I saw some really weird stuff. And
Yeah.
also, if you're using a but, you just can get rid of the period. Don't have it at the start of the sentence.
Of course, yes.
And then there's a missing S. When he asked one of the exterminator,
Oh.
it should be exterminators.
Or just the exterminator.
Yeah. Might
Yeah,
just
but
yeah.
it's one of the exterminator.
Yeah.
Yes.
So wouldn't it just be the exterminator? You wouldn't have to be one of.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If it's only
that's
meant to be one person, make it one person. If it was meant that there was multiple exterminators and you're asking one, then do it the first way.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think fumigating an entire house is a one-man job, so it's probably a team of investigators, of exterminators.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. So the next one I have is some caveman speak.
Always love to see it.
Judith and some of friends scavenged through the stuff looking for evidence.
Judith and some of friends.
Yeah, so some of her friends fixes that. And then my last one here is missing an ly.
Oh.
Although we moved into a new house, we were now convenient, close to our schools, so we were happy.
I thought I had that. Oh, I must have left that out of my Inquisition.
Yeah,
I remember that one too. Yeah. Apparently, I subconsciously saved some for you guys.
Yeah, you're like, I need to make a note of this, and then continued reading.
That might have been the case because I wasn't reading it through a Google Doc where I could just easily highlight and make a comment. I had to switch between tabs. So
yeah. All right. Let me make sure I have my water here, because I have a conjunction junction.
Oh boy.
And next stop, Conjunction Junction. Doot, doot.
It was yet another housebound Humboldt County day, with the rain drumming hard on the apartment roof, gushing down the street in heavy, ankle-freezing torrents. It was on gray, wet days such as this one, when there was nothing but reruns on Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, and all the board games and videos had already been played, hide and go seek seemed like a worthwhile idea. It was 7-year-old Olivia Sotoy's turn to be seeker, and she already had a good idea where her older sisters were. It brushed over her face and fluttered her short, bobbed hair. It was now a hollow opening facing a lawn surrounded by dry fields and woods. It hurt, and the summer landscape was still there, so she knew she wasn't dreaming. And no, Adam Sandler or Jim Carrey or the Three Stooges. It rifled through the pages of a souvenir scrapbook, resting on Mizaki's writing desk, coming to rest on a particular page with a taped yellow fragment labeled Story Bit Found by Mizaki Satori, 7, in Squirrel's Nest behind Holiday Gardens Apartments in Merlet, CA, March 13th, 1996. Writer, no name. It wasn't until the sorceress left for a hunting expedition that he acted. It soon earned the reputation of the third most dangerous magic book in the world, after the Grisly Grimoire by Egolath Asgroth of Zilth, and the most dangerous book of all, the spontaneous combustible Besphalamenon, which, even a mere mention of its name, caused one's shoes to burst into flames. Ouch. It opened an eye when the phone on the shelf began to ring. Once, twice, 3 times. It's probably something really gross and disgusting. It just makes you look like a goddamn freaking retard. And then, turning back, she swallowed the lump in her throat and slowly climbed the creaky, lichen-infested porch. It was like someone was slowly twisting a dimmer all the way off. And when the porch creaked and moaned, she gasped and whirled around. And speaking of her sisters, she could almost hear them coming. It's all just your wild imagination playing tricks on you. It's time for lunch. It's not like her to be an hour late. But I didn't go into the woods out back, she mumbled, because I was in a hurry to look for Olivia. That's why? And I still don't know why she decided to go hide in the middle of freaking possibly weirdo-infested woods. And no way in hell are you coming back again in the stolen body of an innocent yokai kid, forcing demons and lost souls to do your filthy trickster bidding. It's so dark out there. It's like the Blair Witch Woods out here. Or maybe she was pushed by a ghost of one of her victims. But there wasn't any hauntings afterwards, even though people called it the haunted house. It didn't get its dark, terrible curse until... Or she had to go to one of Lucille's princess tea parties, where she had to listen to Lucille go on about various conspiracy theories ranging from reptilian aliens taking over the government to how colds and flu were actually the result of negative thoughts rather than germs. And Judas would be like... But the brat wasn't going to be satisfied with a vague promise. And her dad wasn't much better, a college deadbeat and dropout turned aspiring attorney who was too preoccupied with winning cases rather than instilling discipline in his daughter. And if the front door was locked, she'd go around and check the back door and every frickin' window. But we didn't believe them because we thought they were just being prejudiced. It means rogue alien human, Olivia murmured, 'cause that's what Ellie Lambert is, a rogue alien human. It was at Redwood Park, just my family and my friends and their parents, the ones who were able to come. It was a mess. Half the kids were screaming and crying, and the parents were all shocked and disgusted. And the dog was romping around, licking people and tossing around presents. And that's how your party got ruined? And it was down this dark, lonesome road that she found a shadowy community that she thought understood her and who even pushed her interests further. And where were Lucille's parents during all this? But after Judith and then I saw some really weird stuff, I actually became really afraid of that kid. And for several blocks they did, into the shabbier part of downtown across from the college. But where did the doorway go exactly? It was like something out of a fairy tale or a George Lucas movie. And you believed your sister when she told you about what she saw? It was just a scared, angry bunch of teenagers, all looking to kick Lucille's ass. But they didn't find Lucille that day or the next, and when one kid checked by her house, it was entirely covered with this large, fumigating tent. But what's all this got to do with that house back in the woods? It was in good condition compared to the neighboring houses. Our fearful eyes soon fixed onto the tall, ragged silhouettes shadowing the windows, which were dimly lit by shaded lamps. And that's just what we did. It's still at the corner, Deanna replied, still peering out the window. But I've talked with some of the people who had lived there. It was like one of those invasion of the body snatchers things. Wouldn't respond to any proper treatment, just kept crawling and growing and popping out in other places on her arm. But from time to time, the old path comes back, but in strange, unexpected places. And that anyone who ever ventured to follow it had either found strange artifacts that changed their lives for the worse or else wound up possessed or don't ever come back at all. But that path isn't going to come back now, Izumi pointed out. But you never can tell with things like that. It's these things only means of escape. Gullible ne'er-do-wells who want to rip that barrier away on things better left unknown and unrevealed. And snake-like, with only front legs that left smears of a black, gooey substance as it crawled and slithered its way down the pane. It paused for a moment to peer sightlessly in at them before noiselessly dropping down into the garden below. Finn.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, so this is what I got from this. this is my interpretation as I was like jotting down some notes based on what you were saying. Olivia finds a magic place with a spell book in the closet, and then also hears her, but then like later hears her sisters like calling for her, establishing that she's actually just playing make believe in the closet, and she's late for lunch, so she decides to try and wrap up her adventure in make believe and fight off some bad witch. She then got stuck at Lucille's tea party in her make believe land, and then there's a bunch of stuff about Lucille after that. Eventually, she does make it back to lunch, and with her sisters, and then it's just her sisters asking her questions about her adventures while she's having lunch. And then there's some weird creepy thing like on the window that like maybe it wasn't all just make believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I got out of your conjunction junction for like the plot.
It really pulls down the horror a lot.
I mean, like here, like yes and no. Like it just kind of makes it more of like kind of a like childhood like childhood nightmare kind of thing.
Yeah, that's possibly all in her head at that point as well.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, those kinds of weird stories we get when Mikey reads all the sentences in a story that start with words that they probably shouldn't, like its, ends, or buts, because there's always better words to use.
Indeed. All right, Gamer, do you have any grammar in yellow?
I think I have a couple left.
Okay.
So this one, after a few minutes of pondering, she stepped cautiously over to the door, reaching out to grasp the threshold. So, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Personally, I'm always against using minutes in this situation, because odds are it was not 3 minutes that she waited there. Like,
No.
Put on a 3-minute timer and stand in one position. Like, it's a long time. Like, I prefer the rough sense of the word, like using moment, for example. Like, after using a few moments, she decides to go in, because, like, it's more vague, but you still know that the character's thinking about it. And this happens a couple times through the story where, like, minutes are used, but I don't know if it's actually meant to be full-on minutes or not.
Yeah, especially since like there's a part in the story where like she's off in La La Land, like in this weird like other place, but then her like sisters are like very quickly like trying to look for her apparently. So like how long has she been in that magic land or that version of the woods before like her friends before her sister and the babysitter find her? Like time is sort of vague in that space as well. So
yeah, and that one is like more acceptable because like at that point she's like failing sand checks from like the creepy shit happening, and she's locked in place, so she is theoretically actually sitting there for minutes wondering what to do. That's fine.
Yeah.
But like the first one, for sure, it's like it doesn't seem like it should be actual minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But what do I know? And then this one we get to this is a title to the second story. Like the old newspaper clipping.
Yeah.
And this grammar is literally just the part where it says the Express and Telegraph. There's an extra space at the front of the Express.
Oh, you're right.
It's like in a little bit. Just enough to bother me.
Just really, wow, that is like this is the hill you die on.
Yeah, a little bit. And honestly, I only noticed that because when I copy and pasted that section in as a title,
you realize
for me doing any notes on that section, I noticed that it was in a bit.
I wonder if that's why you didn't pick up that it was all like italics as well, is because you were focused on that versus like the fact that entire thing is italicized.
Yeah, probably. Also,
the fact that italics sucks because it's not. It for some people it's not noticeable enough.
No. With the amount of times I complain about it, you figure I'd be like scouring every single paragraph. Is this italic? No. Okay, moving on. Is this one italic? No, moving on.
Well, like I'm looking at it like from like about 2 feet away from my screen, and just looking at the screen itself with like the italics on one at the bottom and then some non-italics at the top. I can't notice a difference. Like just staring at the screen, I was like, I don't really see a difference.
Yeah. But I'll move on from there.
Yeah.
This is when they're looking for Olive, and they say, "Olive, where are you?"
Yeah.
But the "where are you" doesn't have a question mark on it, just an exclamation mark. So I feel like it should have both on the "where are you."
Yeah, true.
Because you're loudly asking a question.
Also, I was gonna go after Olive, like same way I did with Izanami, but then I realized, oh no, it's just a nickname because it's like instead of Olivia, they went with like Olive as like a shortening, like for their name. It's like Steve or Steven, like you call him Steve rather than Steven because just like something that kids do, they'll make nicknames for each other, like
or a better one, Dick instead of Richard.
Yeah, exactly. Or exactly, yeah, or Rich versus Richard, yeah,
or Richie, or
yeah, exactly.
But moving on from there. The porch blurred. This is when she got grabbed. The porch blurred past her as she was then yanked backwards towards the void. Then warm, the strong hands caught her flailing feet and arms, and then she was yanked back.
Did it really? Okay, yeah. Continue.
So I'd suggest putting a comma after then, because when I first read it, I somehow read it as the warm and strong hands, like it was referring to the hundreds of arms that just started grabbing her.
Yeah.
So when I first read it, it made it sound like Kaylin was like the source of the 100 shadowy hands that was grabbing her, because it was later said that Kaylin was the one that grabbed her. So I was very confused.
Yeah, fair.
But putting a comma there after then, like, punctuates it a bit more, so you notice.
Yeah.
And then comma.
Sorry, that just like took me a second to realize.
I was waiting to see if anyone.
Because I was like, I thought for a second I thought you were like then like looking for like you had another quote that was like without a comma, and then I was like, wait, no, he said then comma, and like he just said he was just pointing at. It's like
yes,
nice.
Not only was I so scared, I also was worried that I wasn't going to be believed. I'm mean. Okay. Did you do that one too?
I brought up the whole be believed thing. Was there more to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
I also was worried that I wasn't going to believed. Ellipses. I'm mean. The thing was so crazy looking compared to blah 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 blah. So like, I don't think she's that mean.
I think it's supposed to be I mean, as in like I mean.
Yeah, no, that's the correction.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you do that correction as well?
I did not. I did not catch that one.
Yeah, she's calling herself mean, but she's really not.
Okay, I was more focused on the be believed thing. I think in that.
Yes, I was more focused on her being mean.
Yeah.
But that is the end of my grammar in yellow.
All right. Then I suppose we move on to actual thoughts. So I'm going to start with the images and photos that are presented in the story throughout it.
I forgot to look those back over.
So looking at them, honestly, I think for the most part they're fine, and they are appropriate to what's going on through the story, but they also don't give away too much. Like the first one's an image of like a girl and her reflection, and the reflection's kind of coming out of the mirror kind of thing, and it's got a girl with a lantern, kind of like what we see Lucille later on, but like at that point we have no context to what this is. And then the next one is a bunch of scratchy and like vague faces on like a black paint on a black screen, and that is and you see that, but then you get like the part where Olivia like notices like vague yet like misshapen yet still recognizable human-like mouths and eyes and noses, kind of blurring through the window pane. So like it's a good like illustrative thing of like what she's seeing with the paragraph of what she's seeing right next to it, I feel.
Yes. I have two thoughts on that though.
Okay.
One, it's very symmetrical and laid out.
Yeah.
Which I feel like it should just be like randomized a little bit.
Unless that's exactly what you saw, which is like that's kind of creepy as well. If it's all that
ordered like tic-tac-toe.
Yeah.
Or like Connect 4 or whatever is happening here. Also, why is the one circled in blue?
Oh, you're right. I
think it's
even
because
yeah.
This image was pulled from something else. And used as inspiration. Because I was waiting for like a focus to be mentioned on one specific face, but there wasn't any.
Yeah. In fact, it says like it doesn't really go into like a specific one at all. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't catch that. And then the next one we have, I think, is just an image of, it's just a photo of like the woods, like a trail through the woods, like the almost like an abandoned yellow brick road kind of looking thing.
It almost looks like lava, though.
Well,
it's not, but
yeah, no, it looks kind of like yellow leaves or like yellow brick road or lava.
Yellow, that's freaking red, dude.
Well, I am colorblind a little bit, so I might be. Let me see this thing up close. I was also looking at it like, okay, no, I mean it's orange. There's some yellow and orange. It's like orange, like dead like fall leaves, like orange and reds and stuff like that. At least that's how it's showing up on my screen for me. So
yeah, we might have different tints. It looks relatively red for me.
Yeah,
but it's fine.
But that's again, that one's it's showing like a creepy wooded path or like a mist, like an enchanted like kind of wood looking path kind of thing. And I think they're talking about this about the well, the whole story is called The Way Through the Woods, so it works well enough. And then I think the last one is just a creepy girl with a lantern walking through the woods, which is at the very end of the story, which is kind of again just like what they were talking about with when evil Lucille is like coming out of the hut and chasing them, kind of thing. So
it's in red light. Yeah.
Red light. Okay, it must be a tint on your screen because I'm seeing like pale yellow.
I know. I'm fucking with you,
you asshole. All right, that's the end of my notes for the photos and images and so that. It's just like I thought they were fine enough. Like they work.
Yeah.
They don't obstruct the story too much.
Mm-hmm.
And then my next, so my actual like comments on the actual story itself. There was no trace of clothes, shoes, or sports gear. There was no trace of anything resembling the interior of a closet. It was now a hollow opening facing a lawn surrounded by dry leaves and woods. Aw, shit. Olivia is about to get Narnia'd. Next sentence. Olivia scrunched her nose and frowned. Is this like Narnia? I need to read faster. Because I literally like said like, oh shit, Olivia's about to get Narnia, and then I read the next sentence of the quote, and I was like, and she straight up references Narnia. I was like, god damn it.
Mm.
I mean, it is like the most like common like term for like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's literally in the name in the name of the first book.
Yes.
Because a wardrobe is just another word for closet. But yeah, so I thought that was funny that like I referenced that like for my own quote, and then I continue reading the story, and they said the exact same thing.
Nice.
Yeah. Then the next thing I have, with a huff of annoyance, she stepped determinedly across the threshold, the sweet, heavy scent of loamy earth and blossoms soon filling her nostrils and coated the back of her throat. Loamy earth? According to dictionary.com, adjective, denoting or relating to a fertile soil of clay and sand containing humus. So I learned a new word or descriptive word for the smell of soil, like specifically like that stuff where like things are growing in the soil.
Yeah.
Because I'd never really heard the term loamy. So
same.
And then we have this one, which I think Mikey might have referenced in his Conjunction Junction and like commented about it, but I'm going to be a little bit more theatrical with mine. It soon earned the reputation of the third most dangerous magic book in the world, after the grisly grimoire of Oglath Asgoroth of Zilf, and the most dangerous book of all, the spontaneous combustible Becephalomenion, which even a mere mention of its name caused one's shoes to burst into flames. Joke's on you! I'm not wearing my feet!
Yeah.
I did hear the ow or the ouch when you were doing the Conjunction Junction, but I was muted. So
oh, okay.
Yeah, I just thought that was funny. It's like that little mention. It's like the he who should not be named that I can never say his actual name because
of course, yes,
because of the running gag that if you say he who should not be named's name, your head explodes. So
yeah, for me when I read that quote, I'm like, joke's on you, my shoes are in the other room. They're on fire in that other room. I have to buy a new pair of shoes, but they're over there.
Yeah, it's like joke's on you, my feet are in the other room. It's like then your fire alarm goes off. It's like beep beep. It's like, oh, fuck. Why do we smell smoke? But then the next thing I have here is actually from the Telegraph, or specifically the Express and Telegraph. And now that I'm seeing my quote version of it, I can't unsee that space before
I know,
the
right?
Express.
You're welcome.
Damn you, gamer.
Glad to have ruined that for you.
All right, yeah. So the Express and Telegraph, Neo Calpuria, New Australia, 1867 to 1992 or to 1920. Plague of apocalyptic proportions. A vessel infested and the crew demoralized. An account arrived from New Amsterdam told of strange adventure which happened recently on board of the schooner Medib Lethderg, which was sailing from New Hawaii to New Pacifica, California. Oh, I wonder if it's New Hawaii, California. Anyway, the schooner was manned by a mixed crew of Gurdon, human, and elves. So there's a lot of new places here in this article, but and as far as I know, outside of like New Amsterdam, which was historically the first name of New York City, the other places don't seem to exist, as far as I can tell. Like doing like a quick Google search and such. At least like the new versions of them, like the name, the new ones, like the ones with new in the name, because like usually that's what they do for like towns and stuff like that. Is like there is a Pacifica, California, and there is a Hawaii. Though now that I'm curious, like because I didn't check if there was a new Hawaii, California. But yeah, so I'm curious if this is like some alternate reality, because like the Curtisville stories seem to have those in the setting, like alternate realities seem to kind of like pass through this setting's reality a couple times.
Like the reality they're in, there's chick charnies and magic and all this other stuff, so they're already in a different reality. So
yeah, and they do. The Curtisville stories also do seem to have like some kind of multiverse to them, because there's humans from other realities or other places. Like they're not native humans to Earth. There's like humans from other Earths, maybe. So yeah, had me curious about that. And it also could just be like just more fictional towns and locations, like you said, Gamer, in the setting of Curtisville's stories. So
yeah. There's just a lot of new, like I can't wait for like the cyberpunk apocalypse to happen here, so we have like Neo New Hawaii and shit like that.
Yeah, or it's like that joke. It's like Neo New York.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
No, you said yeah, fair, yeah.
I was referencing one of the actual locations mentioned in the story,
and I was referencing an old gag of like what the future holds for New York. It's just going to be called Neo New York.
Yes, I was doing both.
Excellent. Moving on to the next thing I have in my comments here. I'm also guessing that since it's mentioned that the schooner was crewed by Gurdon humans and elves, that this is also matching into the setting's magical realism aspect, where like it's in a world where like humans and other magical creatures and magical beings live side by side in either, but like, and like everything's like they go about mundane lives and such.
Shadowrun.
Yeah. It's Shadowrun, but in like apparently in this case it's in like the 1820s or the 1867. So it's actually kind of like again, Connective Tissue's time recently found out that the original company that came up with Shadowrun and Earth Dawn, the RPG settings, they no longer have the rights for Shadowrun, but they had the rights for the old Earth Dawn fantasy setting. So they made a new timeline where magic returned in the 5th world, not the 6th world, like in Shadowrun. And it's now called London 1879. So it's like in like basically Victorian era, but like there's orcs and trolls and elves and so that have that were originally humans that like suddenly expressed into these different fantasy races. But yeah, I'll move on from my Connective Tissues time there. So the next quote I have here, she struggled to her feet and scurried to the phone, yanking up the receiver. Yeah, hello, she said groggily. What? She winced at the shrillness of the voice on the other end. So this is when Mizaki like tumbles out of the broom closet and so that. And I was like, was Mizaki sleeping in that broom closet and while waiting for Olivia to find her? Did she take so long to find her that she was actually started like dozing off down in that closet?
Why?
Because like it's like she said groggily, like it's
more along the lines of like, oh fuck, I don't want to listen to this person.
Oh, maybe that, yeah.
That's the way I saw it, anyways. But yes, also may have fallen asleep in there.
Yeah.
Because you're taking so long from being like stuck in Narnia.
Being lured away into like this weird version. I've got a thing about like what actually happened because like that's my next quote here. Actually, I'll just go with that.
Perfect.
All I know is that she must have a good enough reason for coming, and at this very moment, I'm hating our kid sister for going off to hide in the woods out back all by herself. So yeah, this is when like she's hearing her sister's voices like off in the distance, while Olivia is in like this magical wood place. And I was like, wait, so is the portal just does the portal in the closet just go out to the woods out back? But like the weather's all different. Like it was raining when Olivia was in the apartment, and it's like it was like considered sunny and clear in the magical wood part of it. Unless Olivia is hearing her sisters in this place, but they're on a different plane of existence. So like this is a different version of those woods kind of thing, and she's hearing like an echo of her sisters who are in the real world, like walking through the woods. And
yeah, Olivia might be in the time dilation.
Yeah, and from that one story we did, I think that was actually a Won't Think Straight story, actually. Like one of the early ones where like the guy is like stuck in, like he just suddenly like blinks into another, it like blinks forward in time or something. But I actually have an update from this because I again continued reading the story and I got some more ideas here. So it's never mentioned directly, but I get the impression later on that what Olivia was experiencing was actually at least partially illusionary, and she was being lured to this shabby shack in the woods behind the family apartment. Like maybe the portal was real, but it just like ported her to the outside into the woods, but then like made it look like to her like it was like a clear day in a different version of the woods, when really she's like just appeared in the woods outside her apartment and it's still raining and storming. And yeah, she just walked outside after getting caught up in this creature's like metaphorical web of lies and illusionary magic. So yeah, that's why that's my kind of going theory is that at least partially, it was actually like an illusionary baiting to go out to the woods to that creepy hut. And then the next thing we have, oh please, Izumi groaned. You actually believed all that stuff about those kids dying of some disgusting demonic disease at a slumber party seance? Actually, they got murdered by some unknown killer, Kyoto corrected her. All of them poisoned by this mandrake-like plant root that was vaporized in the kerosene in this kerosene lamp. Worked faster than arsenic. Worked faster than arsenic and pretty horrible too. Their skin was all blistered and purplish black, and it was flaking off in bloody strips. So this is like what Olivia is hearing, like from like as her like sisters seem to be like looking for her, and she starts like, and then they start talking, and she can hear those conversations as well, like kind of off in the distance in the woods. And so she's able to hear this, and like she's kind of like rolling sand from like the things that she's like hearing from like the hut and stuff. And so I just kept picturing her just trying to ignore that and just going la 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 la, because she was already kind of freaking out by like what she was hearing her sisters talking about. Like she was always kind of getting like traumatized by that, like as little kids do when somebody tells them something scary, or like they overhear some older people saying something scary.
Yeah, her sisters are literally just making it worse.
Yeah, exactly, and they don't know it, which is just kind of like a little bit of like silly or like silly fun in the story amidst the horror. It's a little bit like macabre horror, like macabre humor.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm going to use this section here, but once again, I am just enamored with the strangeness and magical realism these stories seem to give us. Like that these characters who live in Curtisville or like around Curtisville, like just seem to like live in a world where like fantasy shit and horror shit is just like commonplace and mundane. Yeah, again, this was the vibe I was like I enjoy about these stories. So moving on to the next thing here. There you are, Kyoto shouted. Finally. We've been looking all over for you guys, Izumi burst out. It's like the Blair Witch Woods out here. So this story does have its fair share of little pulp culture references like this in the dialogue, amidst all the fantastical creature terminology that we get as well. And honestly, it works for me because it helps ground it in mundane modern world where kids would reference things like this in when they're talking about like weird shit. Like at least I did as a kid and still do, like in conversations, like when weird shit happens in real life, like for me, I do tend to like think back on like find like an anchor point or like kind of a like a referential point to like try and like figure like just to either make light of the situation of like what's of the weird situation, or just to kind of like find a way to like familiarize it to me.
Yeah.
Like this weird thing reminds me of this thing. Oh, like when like the power went out the other day, and like we had like there's this horrible like blue flash that like lit up the sky on my end of the neighborhood.
Shit out of me, by the way.
Yeah, on my end of the neighborhood. And then like for you, gamer, it was green flashing light. I literally like all I could think of was the War of the Worlds has finally happened. Like the Martians are coming down with the tripods.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, like that literally, and we talked about it afterward, and like about like, oh, it was like just a transformer exploded up the hill from where I live, but it lit up the yeah, it was alien, it was the Transformers landing, or it was War of the Worlds kind of stuff. But yeah, like that kind of like
it's both if we're talking about Transformers, because they're aliens and also the Transformers.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, like that's the kind of thing that we've had conversations where we reference like pop culture all the time. Like, and I remember
into our show, we do it every episode.
Exactly. And like that's not like, but it's not isolated to the show. Like we do this in real life anyway too. Like and when I was a kid, I was also doing the same thing. So yeah. It helped ground the conversations that were going on in the story for me, like to like make it feel believable. Like that these are the kind of, these are real, these are actually like they're believable conversations that kids would have.
And they're like honestly a little long-winded, but that's kind of the way that conversations would go in that situation because of all the referencing back and forth and stuff like that.
Also, I mean, there's a little bit less stuttering, but this is also the kind of like conversations I've had with my niece, Cultist. So, and she's about the same age as these kids now. So like, yeah, it makes sense. Like she has like, there's a little bit more stuttering on her part, but like she has long-winded little like descriptions and like talks about things to me sometimes. Not saying that's a bad thing, just like that's how kids talk. So like,
can't wait till she starts listening to the podcast.
yeah. Niece Cultist, it's not. It wasn't a bad thing. It was just like that. That's how kids talk. So
yeah.
It's again a grounding point. It's an anchor point for like familiarizing with the story and the situation. Anyway, moving on. Before I toss myself further under a bus.
That's fine.
So yeah, the next thing I have here. Yeah, Kyoto scowled, but we didn't believe it. We didn't believe them because we thought they were just being prejudiced because she's a hualau. Hualau what now? Kaylin asked, baffled. Where we're from, it's kind of like the Hawaiian word haole or haole, Mizaki explained, meaning foreigner, although hualau is more of an ethnic slur. Even the non-native people hate people called. Even the non-native people hate being called that. They're rather being called. That's a grammar inquisition, but I'll get to that in a second. They are rather being called Malihini or Haloe or Midgarder. It means rogue alien human, Olivia murmured, because that's what Ellie Lambert is, a rogue alien human. So first off, grammar inquisition. Belated grammar inquisition. I think it should be they'd rather be called, because it would be like they would rather than they are rather being called. But secondly, oh man, we finally, after so many years, after like the wait is over, we finally have a proper definition in story from a term that we heard in summer camp and like other Curtisville stories. The hualau word actually gives us an explanation in this story through a natural dialogue like explanation.
That's cool that we're getting a proper explanation for it.
Yeah. because this also gives more credence to the to my idea from Summer Break, and as a result, 2017's version of Summer Break that we've covered over the years. That Olivia was reading. So specifically in Summer Break, Olivia was on the bus reading a multiversal tabloid kind of thing, and because and like that's kind of, this adds extra credence to that, because it's now fully established that like beings, even humans from other places and realities, seem to be a thing in this setting, and now we have like proper
sure.
and we kind of already knew that, but like this actually gives us more explanation for like some of the terminology that we've heard over the years, like because we never really got a proper name for, or like a proper explanation for what a Hualau was. I think the closest we got was just like a non-native human, but this one just kind of gives us even more explanation as to where the word comes from, which I thought was cool.
It's very nice.
Yeah. The next thing I have here, well, I'm surprised she's still going to school, Kaylin muttered. She sipped her drink, frowning. Man, there's a lot of conversational storytelling in this story. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's more of an observation of the story. It is this whole story is constructed in a very natural way when it's telling. It's not just like it feels natural versus like somebody just giving exposition, like just constantly exposition dropping. It actually feels like a natural conversation, or like a natural way that like an oral storyteller would tell some other people about a story, but it's being but it's written here and some of that. And as it keeps going, though as it keeps going, I do question how Kaylin has memorized other like some of these other conversations and stuff that have gone on. And I mean, to counter that, she is an elf, as established. So maybe she has some kind of eidetic memory as like a racial trait or something. Or
level 2.
What?
Yeah, she took that trait at level 2.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe she's just a born talented storyteller. And so these aren't actually the conversations like exactly to the letter that were being said, but she's just kind of going in and filling in the blanks for this performance that she's telling these children.
That's what I figured. It's not verbatim. It's just this is basically what was said. Yeah.
I just had to get that out there because, like, I mean, it is sort of a thing that happens on our show where we question, like, how does this character know all this stuff that they're saying to these characters?
Yeah.
Also, with something that said, just shortly before this quote I did, where like Olivia takes like a solemn sip from her coffee and like affirms something that Kaylin asks her, and just like replies, "Yep." I had to remind myself that she was all like a lot. These kids are all these are all kids, and like specifically Olivia is 7. So my mental image of this is just these kids dealing with these kinds of like crazy, weird, like horror fantasy situations and circumstances. In just sort of this like matter of fact kind of situations. It's just like solemnly drinking her coffee. It's like, or her hot chocolate. It's like, yep. It's exactly like that. And it felt very much like the Goonies or like a Little Fears tabletop RPG like adventure, where the characters talk a little bit more adult than it's like the kids they act more serious on the situation. Yeah.
Yep.
So my next one here. My sister wasn't one for telling tall tales. She even told my parents about it, although, not surprisingly, they were rather skeptical about the whole thing. There's a bit more grammar
in there. It sounds like.
So it's like she even told our parents about it, comma, although not surprisingly, comma, they were rather skeptical about the whole thing, not things. Especially Dad. He thought it was all a prank some film student did with some hidden mirror and cameras. He had always been pretty skeptical of the paranormal until he came face to face with it. So first off, why is her dad is their dad skeptical of this stuff? Kaylin was literally described earlier as an elf. Is the dad
Okay.
not actually in on this kind of stuff?
Okay, just because someone's an elf doesn't mean that magic is like prominent in the world. Like fantasy races might be a thing, but magic might not be in the open.
Or like even elf people don't like believe in some of the magic because like they're more in the modern day kind of place.
Well, yeah, but again, just because you're an elf doesn't mean you're magical.
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's sort of actually like that Pixar movie, I think, Onward.
Yes.
Or where like it's a fantasy world that like has suddenly become modernized over the centuries, where to the point where like magic is like a myth, kind of thing. So, you're right. It could be like that. I do propose another option, but I don't believe it. I don't want to believe it. Just like devil's advocating this.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, advocating. I don't want this to be the case, but it could also be that this that all the supernatural stuff in this story and like all the references to like fantasy stuff yet again the adults don't see because the magic and the supernatural stuff is all like belief powered by the children or by the younger characters in these stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just all make believe.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to believe that. I don't want to mundanify it like that. Because I love the magical realism of these stories. I just had to throw that out there as a devil's advocate. My second thing here about the dad, being pretty skeptical of the paranormal until he came face to face with it. Who is it? What's her dad's name? Zach Baggins from Ghost Adventures. He didn't believe in ghosts until he came face to face with one.
Is that like literally?
That's literally like that's literally in the intro. It's like, my name's Zach Baggins. I didn't believe in ghosts until I came face to face with one. Now I'm out here trying to get further proof of the paranormal.
Nice.
Yeah, it was just like I had to like reference that because it's just such a pronounced line. It's just like, wow. The next thing I have, Kaylin shrugged and shook her head. We didn't know what they were, and they weren't as scary as what came afterwards. So I use this quote, but like it really feels like this story is just like 2 or 3 stories mashed together. Like we kind of referenced earlier. Like the first half was Olivia getting lured by the ghost demonic hut thing and like being saved by her siblings and her elven babysitter. And then the other half of this story so far, and this is as I'm reading the story, is just like the whole history about that ghostly entity that tried to snag Olivia. Like just the first part of it is like the encounter, and then the rest of the story is another story that's just like the origin story for that monster that tried to get her.
Yeah, it's almost like the story should have stopped, and then they sit down, and then when they're sitting down talking about the backstory of what happened, that's another story.
Yeah, exactly.
Like another whole entry that should be happening, you know?
Yeah, or like there should be almost like chapter 1, the encounter, and then chapter 2 is the origin kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
something like that. Like they're like, because some of these stories that we're going to be covering, I know have chapters in them, so I know there's parts in these stories that are like segmented like that, and I feel like that's something that could have been done for this story as well, for a little, again, better clarification on like what's going on and like how things are being organized in the story. Now that said, like the story being mashed, like two of them mashed together, there are some linking threads that we do get through it, like especially from the ghost thing, because like we find out by the end that the reason why we're getting this kind of information is because of Ellie Lambert, who seems to have a connect. Well, at first we don't realize has like a full on connection to Lucille Lambert, but seems to have a connection to that character in that she's going down a similar path as Lucille did.
Yeah.
And then even with the articles clippings we get at first, like they're just kind of referenced and we get those things. But then later on, when like we find out about the houses being fumigated for poisonous centipedes and scorpions, then suddenly you're harkened back to the articles. I was like, oh shit, it's a similar curse kind of thing. And then even the sorceress's booby trap spell book, like that dangerous spell book, is likely what Lucille found, and then what Ellie had found. So it does all kind of come together and all kind of like culminate by the end. but it's quite a winding trail between like several storylines.
Takes a little while to get there, but it does, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so at this point, this is a quote, and at this point of the story, I was getting a little like this sort of points out at the story's like length and how deceptively long it feels.
I mentioned that when I was doing my readings to like keep you up to date of how far along I was. I thought I was 3/4 of the way through, and then like just because of the vibes of it, and then I looked at the scroll bar, I was like, oh, I'm not even a third done.
Yeah, so this is the quote I have that I commented, and this is like again showing how far it was. So she disappeared without a trace, Izumi said in a whisper. Just like that? But what's all this got to do with that house back there in the woods? Kyoto inquired impatiently. Thank you for asking the $100 question, Kyoto.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, because at that point I was like, where is this going? Like, what is this connected here?
She's like an audience surrogate at that point.
Yeah. And then the next thing I have, it's all a bunch of like quoted dialogue. So where's it at? On the far corner of the street at the edge of the woods, where the subdivision used to be. Judith stopped sniffing and stared at her friend, baffled. What happened to it? It's still at the corner, Deanna replied, still peering out the woods. Just standing there. Now it's gone. Just vanished suddenly. No, I mean the subdivision. Oh, that. I also just liked this little interaction, this little bit of like writing in like for the interaction. It's just because like
it was so good.
Yeah, it's just like where's it at? It's like, oh, it's at the corner. It's like where that old subdivision used to be. What happened to it? And then like the character's like, oh, like, it's still there. And then wait, oh, it just vanished. That's in there. It's like, no, I meant the subdivision. Oh yeah, here, let me tell you.
Yeah,
like,
the nice thing about it is like when you're writing, you as a writer know everything.
Yeah.
But the characters don't necessarily know what each character is trying to portray to them. And this is a good example of like she didn't fully get it, but that's realistic.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just a fun little like back and forth too. So
yeah.
And yeah, like the story eventually explains like what was brought up here about like the subdivision and stuff like that. But again, like this is all hearkening to like the conversational storytelling, which it is long and meandering, but it does tell you, like it does get to it in time. It's a journey, but it's not an unpleasant journey for the most part. There's just a few instances where it's like, all right, like I think it's almost done because it sounds like it's almost done. Nope, we got another like couple of pages. But I'll move on to the next thing I have here. Judith and me looked at each other. Then, in a tense voice, Judith asked, which brat? Lucille Lambert. And so at this point, I was like, is this really the first time we're getting Lucille's last name? And it's Lambert? Like Emily, like Ellie Lambert? I guess that's another link between the past and the present story here. Like, that's just like my comment, like my thought process as I was reading this part. I was like, oh, the plot thickens. And then the next thing, I'm about two more things, and I'm done for my actual thoughts. Busily, Mizaki wrote all this in her notebook. Damn, she is a vapid writer.
It's all in shorthand or something.
Yeah, probably. In her notebook. Then within 6 months, all hell broke loose. ... Her pen paused as she looked up, very startled. Kaylin stared back at her, clearly puzzled by Mizaki's suddenly paling face. Then she continued on where she left off. So at this point, like I'm guessing, because we know that like Mizaki from earlier was the one with the scrapbook that had all those articles and stuff like that. So this is another point where the story is like kind of harkening back to something that was previously mentioned. So like at this point I was like, so I'm guessing that this is meant to be Mizaki recalling that she has a bunch of article clippings in a scrapbook and connecting the dots in the story between the bug attacks on the schooner and the bug mold attacks in these events that Kaylin is referencing. Mm-hmm. Like we're getting a character connect the dots the same way that we as readers would connect some dots because we've been like listening to both things. Yes. And then My last thing here is just something that I love about the story specifically. As for that subdivision, the city shut down that road through the woods several years back. There's no building now. There's no buildings now, and they had planted a lot of thick trees across the entrance. And now you would never know that there was ever a path through those woods, or that people had ever lived in that spot. But from time to time, the old path comes back, but in strange and unexpected places, always leading back to that house. I do love me strange abandoned suburbia or subdivisions in the woods that have been closed down or run down, and creepy liminal wood trails. There's just something about it, just like Civilization Lost. Like it's almost like a modern Lost Civilization kind of thing appeal, I think, to it. And just like the creepiness of like a subdivision or like a couple of streets that were like set up as a neighborhood in the woods that was then just kind of shuttered and abandoned, and they just closed off the road that goes to it, and then nature has kind of just crept in and taken over the subdivision.
Especially when it's like so sudden as it is in the story too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really enjoyed a lot of the scene set the scene trappings of the story, or the setting trappings for the story.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's my actual thoughts. So, Mikey, these stands for evil.
All right. So my first note here is about transitions and how it would be nice if there were more transitions to help us keep everything straight, because this is a story within a story within a story, storyception.
It kind of is, yeah. The way it's
100% is.
organized, yeah.
Because, and my note here is the narrator is telling a story of Kaylin, who's telling a story to the sisters about herself and Judith, where they encounter Deanna, who tells a story about Ginger and Lucille.
Oh God, I've gone cross-eyed.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I feel like transitions would definitely help make it a better read anyway, so that we can keep track of where we are in the story, even though it's technically just the sisters and then the babysitter talking to them.
Yeah.
For the next portion. So, yeah. And then what else? All right. So, here's a section that I feel took way too long to get to the punch. I have the quote here. Suddenly we heard a slight creaking noise. Our ears strained and eyes widened as the front door suddenly opened as someone stepped out onto the porch. Everyone, with the exception of Mizaki, stared at Kaylin, incredulous terror in their widening eyes. We stood for a moment silent and motionless, staring as the figure walked slowly towards us. Then Judith managed to catch her breath and yell, "Run!" Many words later. "What did you see?" Olivia asked in a low, frightened voice. Kaylin leaned forward, hands clenched in her lap as she stared at the sisters across the table. "I saw the same Nosferatu dude my little brother saw in his bedroom back in our first house," she explained, "except for one difference." "He was wearing Lucille's eyes?" Izumi frowned, scratching her head. Kaylin shook her head slowly. "This guy had a trench coat full of eyes, as well as a lot of creepy crawlies." A note of fear came into her voice. "I had a feeling that those things were a part of him rather than a part of an elaborate costume. There was even one big eye right smack in the middle of his chest. So basically, we get the story where a guy steps out, they run, then a few paragraphs later, we finally get the interjection of what did you see from Olivia, and then the description of the monsters. Like, why wasn't that sooner?
We also
Especially since, like, at the moment, there was like a pause of as soon as she saw him. There, like, it stretched out a small pause of like that moment, which felt like it was one of those moments where like you're scared and like, you're taking in all this information really quickly and then you run.
Yeah.
Yet we don't get that information. She does, but the advantage of telling it later compared to right away is you can naturally have the character tell the other characters what she saw. Because if, although the whole thing is her telling the other characters, so she could have actually just said it right away.
Also,
because it's not a narrator situation.
Also, the creature that she saw was different from what Judith saw and what Arlen saw. Like they apparently like they all saw something different come out of the onto the porch.
Yeah, but if they all saw something different, then why are Mizaki and everyone with the exception of Mizaki, in Incredulous Terror with their widening eyes to a monster they have no description of yet?
Yeah.
Other than it's just a guy on his porch.
I'm with you with that. I actually think that like the description that Kalen sees should have been up front, like there, where like where you're suggesting, and then at the point where it's brought up, like the description we get in the actual story, that's when Kalen should also bring up, like, we also like, and here the creepiest thing is that's not what my sister and my brother saw. Like that's when you bring that stuff up, is later on after the chase scene and stuff like that. Because at that point, we have an established thing of what Kalen saw and is running from. So that's fine. Like, and that actually again invokes like the characters that she's telling the story to. Like that's why they're gripped in fear, because they're seeing this horrible thing that she saw in their heads. But then later on reveal that the creature took on different forms depending on who it was. So
yeah.
I agree. Like that is something like it. Like we really didn't get a like it's just a thing, and then they just started running because it was scary. But then we'll get that description later.
We'll deal with that in post.
Yeah, but the thing is, like as you said, that's Kaylin telling the story. So, and these sisters are interested, and they're bringing up questions. Why didn't they bring up the question right when it was about them running? Like, well, why are you running? What did you see? Like,
and then that's when
that's the natural progression of a conversation.
Like I do think the story does well with like just like establishing a natural reading or natural sounding conversation. But yeah, you're right. There definitely should be like that's the point where like the character said, well, "What'd you see? Why'd you run?" And then that's when we get the description for the creature.
Yeah.
From Kalen's point of view, anyway, because that's who's talking. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the end of my actual thoughts.
All right. Gamer.
Yeah. See what I have here.
What do you have left?
Okay, this is obviously around the start where Olivia is looking for her sisters and all that for hide and seek purposes. And she says, "Hey!" She shouted out her shaky voice. Sorry. "Hey!" She shouted, her voice shaky and hoarse. "Wilbur."
Wilbur.
So a very Mr. Ed sounding for the rest of the story is the way that I viewed her voice.
Nice.
Because it's a little hoarse, you know?
Yeah. Apparently, she's also whereas her sisters were Chick Charnies, she's apparently also got some centaur or perhaps Pegasus in her as well.
I mean, it straight up says that she's a what is it?
Chick Charney hybrid?
No, it's straight up like after they get her back from the closet. One of them says, "And no way in hell are you coming back again in a stolen body of an innocent yokai kid." Oh, in
yokai,
a stolen body.
Also, yokai is actually a generalized term for Japanese monsters.
Yes, sorry,
Or
I
monster
read that as coming back to steal a body of an innocent yokai kid.
Yeah.
That's what I thought I read the first time. I read that wrong. Never mind.
Yokai is a general term for like monsters or for like magical creatures and stuff like that.
Yes,
so.
but we're in a world.
I know.
We're in a world where there's elves and all these other creatures, and just because someone's a yokai doesn't mean they're necessarily bad.
No, I'm not. But like that's also it's just a term for super. It's like Vossen. Like Vossen is just the Scandinavian version, like of yokai. So like they're like magical creatures and like fae and creatures of that. Actually, I just as a quick side, the yokai kid is one hell of a Shadowrun character, like alias. It's
yeah, for sure.
It's like for like an oni, or like an oni orc phenotype. It's just like, he's the yokai kid.
It is actually pretty sick.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah,
just got like the Western like theme going on with a gunslinger.
That's pretty sick, actually.
Yeah, he's got like he's got 2 revolvers and a katana.
Yep, deployable revolvers that come out of his forearms.
Yep.
But yeah, either way, moving on. So Olivia is looking for her sisters and all that, and saying like, when I find you, you owe me a big cheesy pizza with some strawberry ice cream, sprinkles, a cherry on top, and don't forget a video rental, either Pixar or Miyazaki, or even the Marx Brothers, and no Adam Sandler or Jim Carrey or the Three Stooges. I hate those guys. And with one single line of dialogue, my hatred for Olivia has begun. Like, okay, Adam Sandler, I get it, it's hit or miss, but like, who hates Jim Carrey? He's a national treasure.
A Canadian national treasure.
Yeah, and the Stooges, they're like actual comedic legends.
I mean, like Marx Brothers are fun, but like I definitely was watching reruns of the Three Stooges more than the Marx Brothers growing up.
For sure. And like, okay, she is only like 7 years old at this point, so like maybe she hasn't developed taste for high art yet, but she's on ice.
Yeah, she's on thin ice, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll move on.
Fair.
With a huff of annoyance, she stepped determinedly across the threshold with a sweet heavy scent of loamy earth and blossoms soon filling her nostrils and coated the back of her throat, choking her as she collapsed to the floor. Credits.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's metaphorical, but yeah, if you take it figuratively, she's just like choking on the set. On like she's being like earth is just being stuffed out her throat.
Yeah. And then right after this, a second stretched into minutes with only the ever increasing rain and thunder, blah 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 blah. So again, like I brought this up before, but like literal minutes here. This time it has to be literal minutes because like the mention of seconds stretching into minutes.
Yeah, and I kind of get this one. Sorry, you go. You go.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh no, I kind of get with this one because like again the way I saw it, it was like the camera or whatever is like in the room waiting for her to come back out of the closet. And she never does, so it's just kind of sitting there waiting for her, and just like this silent, like the only like thing that's breaking up the silence is the lightning and whereas the thunder and rain outside. So,
yeah, the problem is like my camera was sticking with her, not staying in the room. So seconds stretching into minutes. At first, I thought that was her just standing there trying to figure out what's going on, but realistically, it's probably her walking, trying to see where her sisters are, like in that other world.
Yeah,
but we'll move on to the story bit, the one found by Miyazaki in the Squirrel's Nest, the whole story about like Algrisa and all that, and making the book.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to that entire entry is, why didn't she destroy the book once she watched the guy like gib from it? Like maybe she wasn't stalking him for months while she waited for him to die by it. Sure. But even still, once it happened and people realize that the book has dangerous spells in it and the book itself is dangerous to the user, why not destroy the book? From the sounds of the world, magic is normal, so there's no reason to want to preserve this book unless someone is keeping it specifically to give it to wizards that they don't like as an assassination tool.
I think that's either that or maybe it can't be destroyed.
Yeah, but it's not mentioned.
I know
maybe
it's not
we don't know that, though.
Yeah, it's just kind of like read between lines, or like the story didn't mention it because it was a clipping. It was also like an excerpt from like a piece of paper or something that she found in a squirrel's nest. So maybe they didn't get to that part.
It's the most credible source, though.
Yeah,
Squirrels know their shit.
Hey man, they come at full force, and like they're demon. There are demon squirrels out there. So
yeah. Have you seen the game that came out recently, Squirrel with a Gun? Like they're serious business.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll move on. So the end of story 1 happens, of the one that I just mentioned, with the book and all that, and it says yellowed pages of newsprint rustled dryly as more pages were turned. So like for the visual of all this happening, Olivia stepped into the threshold, and then like originally I saw her waiting like in the threshold for a couple of minutes as like the wind was like blowing through the room, turning pages, and and when it stopped on a page, she walked back into the room, read the page, because like I was kind of viewing it like, I'm getting the information because she's getting the information.
Yeah,
and then like as soon as she finished, another gust came up and picked the next story with her, and like I would be fine if that's the case because of how magical this like world is, but like no, that's not what happened.
No, it's very much like again, like if this was a movie scene, she would go through the closet, and like you just have, again, we're still the camera's still statically in the apartment, in the room, and then like the wind would like start brushing up against the pages, and then like the camera would like zoom over to like the one page, allow for the reading of the story, and then like another like gust would like brush that away once you were done and read the next page or next set of stuff. So
yeah, but it just kind of feels strange because like this entire story is told very first person through multiple first persons,
except for the beginning though, because like the overarching narrator is not a character, it's just an omnipresent person.
I guess he just says so little I forgot he was there.
Yeah. Like it definitely, it is kind of out of place because it is very cinematic. Like again, like how I'm describing it is like being like a scene from a movie or like a video game. But yeah, it kind of feels a little out of place after all the other like stories we're getting. It's like it's one part like third person narrative mixed with a bunch of epistolary narrative, which is like the whole thing of like story
epistolary.
Epistolary, I think is the term, which is like basically like the story is told through like other stories or clippings of stories and articles and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And yeah, as we said before, line breaks on the scene changes would be very nice.
Line breaks would be your friend in the story. Yeah.
Also, that whole story of the evil book and all that, it's titled as Story Bit Found by so-and-so. It's a fully formed story with no loose ends. I wouldn't call it a bit of a story. It's a story. Yeah,
maybe like story on a bit of paper found in squirrel nest.
Oh, it's that kind of bit. Maybe.
Maybe. I'm kind of guesstimating on that one. So
because when I hear story bit, it sounds like I'm going to read part of a story, and then I read a full 3-act story.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like okay, weird. Yes, I'll move on from there to the next story that's being told. Talks about all the different new places, which is all nice. New this, new that. And then it says like a mixed crew of Gurdon humans and elves. Yeah. Do we know what Gurdons are? My Googles, they do nothing.
We do, because Gurdons were mentioned in Shadow, Fog, and Firelight. The second Curtisville story that we covered, I think.
What are Gurdons?
Gurdons are like basically like a Fey human mix. I believe. I should have looked this up.
You sounded so sure. Like,
I was.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna lay it all down. Right now.
I know they're creatures of Fey. I think they're Fey human hybrid. Let me double check. Shadow, Fog, Firelight. I'm literally like scouring the wiki right now for that image, or for that. So this is from Shadow, Fog, and Firelight, which is a previous Curtisville story. She was a Gurdon, an outworlder of about Megra's age, which was 16. She wore the orange and gold robes of an Orem pilgrim / tourist celebrating the summer solstice. Okay. Here's another, like, right before that. Her name was Kess. She was a delicate brown-skinned girl with fluffy white hair and gold cat-like eyes. She was a Gurdon. So they're like some kind of magical or like some kind of like otherworldly creature or like person or being that has like tan skin or tan to brown skinned, like white fluffy hair and golden cat eyes. So like they're kind of like catty people.
Okay.
Yeah. Or cat-like feline people. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they are some kind of otherworldly entity, or that pops up on pops up on Earth apparently. So,
Gotcha.
We got there.
We did. So I'll move on to Olivia talking about like how Ellie was being a bitch to her and all that, and the result of her poor birthday party goings on.
Yeah.
Ellie kept calling me stinking McDoo-doo head and kept telling me to stand downwind, although she didn't do it out loud because she was afraid of my sisters and some of the other kids ganging up on her. And then Kaylin says, yeah, well, I'm surprised she's still going to school, Kaylin muttered. She sipped her drink. Whiskey.
Yeah. Well,
it seems like it's like a really serious conversation, even though he was talking about like stinking McDoo-doo head right before that.
Yeah, that's what I brought up earlier, where it's like you got to remember these kids are like 6 or 7, and then like the babysitter's like a few years younger or a few years older, but like the way they're acting, it's very like adult, like it's serious. Like it's like it's like what happened at your party, and then or like, is that really what happened at your party? And then like Olivia like solemnly took a sip from her hot chocolate. Yep.
Yeah,
I was there. I saw she called me a stinky doo-doo head.
But it's all done like with really like dramatic angles and lighting.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's just like that. I do love it because it's just this funny little juxtaposition that's very, very like 80s and 90s or very 80s like kid adventure story where like the kids take things so serious when you're dealing with something supernatural or something like silly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
For sure. And then my next one is basically just an overarching note on having 2 stories running simultaneously about 2 spoiled brats was a bit confusing. Especially when like they were going back and forth talking about Lucille and Ellie. Like they were at one point they were interchangeably like the same person because like they are very similar.
Which there's a point to that, but yeah.
Yes, for sure. And that turned out nicely. But yeah, it was a little confusing reading through. I had to like make sure it's like no, Ellie is the one that learned black magic, not Lucille, right? I think.
Lucille actually learned black magic.
Fuck!
And then Ellie's on the cusp of learning it too. So
yeah,
because because it kind of hints that like from Mizaki and from their conversations, like she found something like in a shed in the woods, probably found the book that Lucille found.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then my last one is also just sort of a overarching niceness that we sort of mentioned, but like it happens multiple times, but like I like the little moments of describing random actions like petting cats, sipping a drink, scratching their nose. It adds a lot to conversations that makes the lines more interesting to read, other than just like person 1 says this, person 2 says that, person 1 says this other thing, etc., etc.
Yeah, like, the conversational storytelling has a lot of buildup in like that you get like you're not just hearing them talking about stuff. It occasionally breaks up that conversation with descriptions of what they're doing while they're being told the story or while they're telling the story. Yeah.
It's like the dialogue very visual, even in a written medium, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
And that's about all I got for notes.
All right. So moving on to final thoughts. So I'm starting to climb back up that cliff from partial recommendation to a full recommendation. It's still teetering to possibly a partial recommendation, but because it's a fairly long read and it's kind of deceptively long. Like both me and Gamer apparently had the similar experience where we're like, oh, this is gotta be over soon, right? right? And then like it's like halfway through, it's like, oh wow, okay. And like that, I'm not saying that in a bad way, because it was just like it kept throwing me off. I was like, I was getting close to the end, and then I'd like check the page count. I was like, oh, I'm still like there, okay. It's basically two stories combined with some extra bits added on, some extra journal, or some extra entries added on. So it's a bit long-winded and it winds a bit in chunks. That said, it is a to me anyway, it is a fully realized like narrative start to finish. Like I don't feel lost or like there's another story I need to read to get context for the one that I just read.
Yeah.
Like this is a completed story, and like it has 2 or 3 stories like kind of like smashed together, but they all intertwine and link together so that like there was a reason for those 2 stories to exist in the same story.
Yes.
The conversational narrative again is a bit winding and requires some focus, but I enjoyed the back and forth and the descriptive bits between the, like we just referenced. And the characters were all pretty well fleshed out. Like at least I felt like without giving full descriptions of them, like I got a sense of like who Mizaki, Izumi, Kyoto, Olivia, Kaylin were, and then even like Lucille and Judith and Ellie, kind of like all the characters are pretty well fleshed out through their description and even through their words, like through their conversations.
You know what was a nice primer to introduce the different characters, at least the sisters, is when Olivia was playing hide and seek. She went to like Azumi's like bed, and it was covered in like fashion and trendy stuff. She went to Kyoto's bed, and there was like horror and sci-fi books underneath. Went to Mizaki, sorry. And there was like science magazines and Beanie Babies and shit all over it. So like that was like a good primer to each character to like get to know them a little bit before you even see them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we didn't even bring that up, but yeah, like during the introductory, it's in an introductory bit, and we get a sense of their personalities, like through how their bedrooms look, which is a great bit of narrative description.
Yeah, the type of nerd each one is.
Yeah, exactly. And as always, I love the urban fantasy element and the childhood horror elements here. Like this felt very much like a Kids on Bikes or Little Fears sort of adventure, mixed in with that magical realism vibe that the Curtisville story setting seems to have, of like different like magical creatures and magical things existing and just being part of the mundane world. And that's like, they're not really the spooky horror thing. They're just people and things in the setting, and it's just bad people or bad magics that are the horror element. But like there's also good magic things and good magic people, kind of thing. So like it's very much in line with stuff I really enjoy in writing and in reading stories and such. This also, and like I just said, like I brought it up, but like I feel like this could be great fodder for a Kids on Bikes or a Little Fears adventure, even Monster and Other Childish Things. If you're setting it in a game where like monsters are like a norm, or like are kind of presented either monster kids or weird kids are like presented as a normal thing, and then just have this like again treated as like magical realism, where like it's the mundane, it's a slice of life mundane world, or like kind of a kid gumshoe sort of adventure, but the kids have powers, or they're dealing with things that they're in a world where that kind of stuff isn't like scary because it's unknown. It's scary because it is known. Which is an interesting take for like urban fantasy, because most of the time it is like this hidden world or this secret world that like people are falling into. But in this case, it's horror in a world where that stuff isn't hidden and it is known to various peoples and various groups, and it's still scary in the case. So
we still don't know how much it's known.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
like for example, the father didn't believe in magic.
True.
So
even
like,
though he may be an elf.
Open again. Elf does not equal magic.
Yes,
in this world, in this dimension, there are fantasy creatures, but there's no magic. Fantasy creatures are just different races.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. Like it could be that kind of situation where like just because you're an elf or just because you're like whatever doesn't mean that you automatically know magic or are going to think that magic is real or believe that magic exists still, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It feels much like so it's in this case it could be that Crittersville is kind of like a Eureka situation where like or like I'm trying to think of what other names for that kind of thing where it's like it's a town or like a localized like setting where like the strange, I guess like Erie, Indiana, even in a way, in a way too, where there's like people act funny or people have like strange traits and are even like weird in their own way, but they all treat it as mundane or they even sometimes deny that supernatural shit is happening, even though they are clearly something supernatural themselves or something otherworldly themselves. But I guess all this to say, like, again, I will recommend this, though it does kind of teeter on partial recommendation, mostly because of like I feel like the formatting could be improved for like clarity and stuff like that, because it is a little hard to navigate these woods as I'm walking through the ways in the woods. So but yeah, otherwise I really did enjoy this read, so I will recommend. Mikey, these stands for evil.
As stated before, this needs more transitions or something to tell you that the scene is changing.
Yeah.
Because I found myself like, and I'm sure we all did, reading a paragraph, and then the next one had nothing to do with the previous one.
Yes.
Which it to me it took me out of the story because it added a layer of confusion to what was going on, and then you figure it out when you finally realize, oh, a couple of paragraphs later, oh well, they're back to talking in the section, and it's not the story anymore that's being told, whatever, and it's just like that. And it's pointed out it's a story within a story within a story. Just
yeah.
But when you got through the story, was it worth it?
Yeah.
For me, no. It really wasn't.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Like it took so long to get to the zinger of, oh well, this person has the same last name as this other person. Woo!
Not related, but
yeah.
except they probably are, as it is hinted in the story. But yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, oh, it just.
I get what you're saying. Actually, recently I've been watching the show Defiance, and I've noticed it's sort of got a similar thing that this story does, where it's bouncing between like three different like plot lines. The problem with this story, though, is that we're not getting like you said, we're not getting the transitionary bit to tell us, oh, we're switching to another character's scene, like another plot's scene between, because like it does kind of jump back and forth during that show, like in various episodes between multiple plot lines. So I think
the transition screen where it's like showing a different location, not just immediately jumping from one scene to another.
Yeah, like and in a script, even in a screenplay and stuff like that, it would show like switching scene, new scene, exterior or interior, blah blah blah. This story doesn't have that because it doesn't even have the horizontal lines, which we had established would like probably improve that kind of transition situation. But
yeah. So as it stands, I'm not going to recommend it.
Tough but fair. And gamer.
Yeah. Well, for me, like as we all said, like it's a long read, and it kept feeling like it was ending over and over again. But it dropped a lot of lore, and it had a rightfully creepy premise to like what's going on there, and also like something's happening to the characters like now. It's not a story being told by someone of events in the past. Granted, that did happen in this story, but something also happened to these characters directly in this story, which I appreciate more now, because like there's been some stories that I've been reading, and like it's a story that someone heard of from someone else, that of a story that happened decades ago, where like you're so far removed it doesn't matter. But even in the stories where it is decades removed, those events are causing the problems that are happening now.
Yeah, we're getting context.
I appreciate all that.
Event.
Yeah. So I liked all that. As we said, it is kind of like 2 or 3 stories all mashed together into one with no transitions, which is a problem. And I struggled through all that, but by the time I got to the end, as you said, Cultist, it is a fully fleshed out and realized story, beginning to end, with not really too many questions that are left unanswered because of how long it is. And I appreciate that. The conversations were all really well done. A bit long-winded, but they're kids talking, so it's going to be that way anyways. It's technically realistic. So I still enjoyed the read. And like, now I know shit about Ellie Lambert, because like in Summer Break or whatever, it was bringing up these characters that it was bringing up characters that I didn't know who they were, but it's like, oh, you know this, you've read the previous one.
I almost wonder if this was like, again, like we have context as to this is a prologue to 27 well, this is a prologue to Summer Break, but it's also I guess technically a prologue to Summer Break 2017, because now we have a little bit more context as to who Ellie Lambert is and why she was dead at the that she had some kind of power at the beginning of Summer Break 2017. Actually, I will say one thing. Not to cut. I don't mean to like step into your spot here.
Hey, it's a discussion podcast.
I will say the only thing that we don't have context to in this story that was laid out in another story that we'd have to read is what a girding is. Like, even if it had said like the schooner was crewed by the cat-like Gurdon humans and elves, like maybe that would have helped a little bit, but like
just something very subtle, like a couple of words just to describe it, so it's not you have to know every single story for sure.
Yeah,
but as you said, that is information from a previous story, which we if you read all these in order, it's probably completely fine.
Yeah. But like otherwise, like this story does well, and it makes sense that they wouldn't give it a description because it was a newspaper clipping from like the 1800s or the 1900s. So like it's like, and it's being treated like the mundane, like, so like, oh yeah, there was a crew of Grudin. It'd be like the same thing as like dwarves, humans, and dwarves, humans, and elves. Like it's sort of like it's supposed to be an established thing already in the world and the setting. So like us as a reader wouldn't be getting a description for it because of that.
But characters themselves wouldn't even ask that because they know.
Yeah,
because they live in that world.
But the part with the I'm so excited. I was so excited when I finally got a like in-world, in-character explanation for what a halau was, because of because when it was referenced in one of the previous stories we had covered, and we weren't exactly sure where it came from, where the term came from.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, sorry. Going back to you.
So all in all, I still recommend the story. Just be prepared for a long read, basically, and keep in mind it's multiple stories being told at once, so you have to really stay on top of that. So it's like leaning on a partial, because I personally think it does need some formatting work, or possibly being split into 2 stories. It would let it breathe a bit more, but all in all, the story being told, I like, and it was a fun read. It wasn't. I was gonna say it wasn't especially creepy, but like when you're in the head of Olivia as like that little girl that's like scared sitting on the front porch with like a potential like creepy creature behind you and you're scared to look and stuff, like that was all really well done.
Yeah. Also, at this point now, I just picture like you're leaning over the edge, helping me up, and like as we're like teetering on the edge of this of like a full recommendation to like partial recommendation.
Pretty
And
much, yeah. But like I'm still
Mikey's
trying to
just,
pull
like,
on you, and like you're like pulling me a little bit into the partial. It's like, no, you have to get up here.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Mikey's like all the way down the cliff, like just like arms crossed, like no.
Yes. So yes, I'll still recommend the story, but I feel like it does need to be split.
Yeah, there's room for improvement, I think. Is the general takeaway.
We can't be all they can't all be Who's Phone.
God, no. It's a god tier.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I think that'll do it. So 2 teetering recommendations, full recommendations, teetering on partial recommendations, and 1 non-recommendation. Room for improvement. But that'll do it for this week's episode. So if you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted. Whether it be on... Oh, no, hang on. We don't do that. You can also leave us a comment, or hang on. So that'll do it for tonight. If you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted. We're all on Twitter, kind of. Mikey is at the E stands for evil. The Gamer in Yellow is at the Gamer in Yellow, but without that W at the end, because his name is very long.
Just one more letter. That's all I need.
Yeah. And I'm at Review Cultist. I'm also on Blue Sky as Review Cultist, so you can send me stuff there. You can also send us emails at aldenteberigamortis@gmail.com. That's ALDENTERIGAMORTS@gmail.com. Where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas, SCPs, spooky things. You creep it, we'll peep it.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to help support our show financially, you can go to Patreon, select the back tier you'd like to support us at. We have $2 and $5 tiers. Special episodes, early access, extra content. To all our patrons that are helping support the show, thank you immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay. And as always, we very much appreciate that. And to our listeners and the authors of these stories, thank you immensely, because without your listenership, it'd be like screaming into the void, falling down a cliff of recommendations or non-recommendations.
Being pulled into a creepy house with no chance of escape.
Exactly. And without your authorship, without these stories that you write and post online for people to enjoy and get hyped for whenever we decide to go for one, because the setting is so cool, we really wouldn't have much of a show because we'd have nothing to talk about. So thank you. Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey. E stands for evil.
And I'm the Gamer in Yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.